Okay, in previous part we stopped on GitHub. I said that this is very similar to file system. I showed you how you can create a repository and do exactly the same as you do in your local file system, creating the files, creating the folders, and downloading a folder, downloading your repository as a zip archive, etc. I also mentioned history. It's a feature of GitHub that you can see file changes uh, in periods of time during your work. You can manage it, and also I said that the next step would be to use a Git command line tool to interact with your repositories hosted on GitHub. But I want to add another step between GitHub and Git, and I'm gonna talk about application called Github Desktop, because as far as I said previously, you can access GitHub with this site, github.com, or with various other programs. And GitHub Desktop is one of these kind of programs. It's cross-platform, meaning you can download it to any platform. It's different from the browser version because it's much more comfortable to use, and actually a lot of people uses it in regularly, because no one uses GitHub, no one uses this interface all the time, although it's possible and everything is available here, all the possible actions, and you can do everything here. But with GitHub Desktop, with application like that, it's much easier, because it allows you to synchronize your local file system with repository. You don't need to create every file manually here. You can set a folder locally to be your repository, and then just click synchronization button and it will do it for you. It will synchronize your local folder with repository pushed to GitHub. I guess this application was made by GitHub community, so it's it's easy to use with GitHub site, GitHub repositories. So I just downloaded a GitHub desktop instance in my for my system, and it should be very easy for Windows. Just click and download and install. Let's open it. GitHub desktop. Okay, I have already logged in here. Let me try to log out, just to show you what would it be like to have a clean installation. Desktop. Okay, I need to also remove a cache from the computer. Let me quickly do that. Remref. Where is cache located? Config GitHub desktop. Okay, I removed cache. I opened the GitHub desktop application. Now you see a clean installation startup. You need to sign in with your GitHub username and password. You sign in, You can optionally change a name and a email. It's optional information, so I'll skip it, and I won't submit any stats. So here you see home page, home screen. You won't have repositories here because I have quite a few of them. If you have a new account, probably you won't, but it doesn't matter. So what we need to do is I want to show you how you can do the same operations to create this repository and all the content of it using only GitHub Desktop. And in parallel I will show how it will appear in GitHub via browser. Because remember, whenever we synchronize our repository, our local folder with remote repository, we'll be able to see it not only in local machine but also via browser. So let's start with creating a new repository, naming repository like folder 1234, optional description. Here is a default path, I won't change it. This is basically a root for all our repositories. We won't initialize readme, and other option isn't necessary to fill. So I'm just creating a repository now. And here we have repository. There is no local changes, and history, as you can see. GitHub Desktop did automatic first commit for us, but you don't need to understand what this is. This is specifically for GitHub Desktop to work, I guess. Okay, we have empty repository. Let's try to synchronize it with remote repository. You do it by clicking on Publish Repository button, or you can choose this option also, or there is a shortcut for that. Let's publish it. The name is the same, and I don't want for it to be private, so I disable this option. Publish repository. And after several seconds we'll be able to view it in our browser. Here you see the option to view it in GitHub. It should open a link in the browser, and this is our repository with our name, and this is the first commit of our repository was done automatically, and you can see it here. Then what? The next option is to view our repository in File Manager, because now we don't need to use these uncomfortable options to create a new file with this simplest possible editor, because it's not sophisticated to use such editor to view your code and to edit it. So instead, now we can open it in our file manager. As you can see, we have a folder and it's empty now. So let's close it for now and see another option. The next option is to open a repository in code editor, in text editor. In my case, this is Visual Studio Code because it's installed in my machine. Let's click on it, and here you see that we have this one file, and let's actually now start to simulate the same stuff we did in the previous lesson by creating several files and several folders as we did previously. And this is very important because this part is very important because, as you can see, you use your local text editor, and it's much more comfortable because you got used to it. You don't need to click all these you don't need to do all these tedious actions by clicking buttons all the time. You can do what you got used to, like create new file, for example file 1, add some content and quickly save it, right? It's much more quicker. Let's close this file and create a folder 1, and in this folder let's create a file 2. As you can see, I'm working much faster. In this environment I can work much faster because this is my editor. I know how it works. I know different tweaks and features of it, so I can move along much faster with editing files. Then what? We have created several files. Now we open GitHub Desktop, and as you can see we have a changes panel here that lists all the changes that we have done. If you remember, while creating a file via browser, you can't create several files at a time. You have one file, one commit, and this is like one change to the repository. In case of GitHub Desktop and basically everything else, instead of GitHub site, you can, this is general behavior to be able to add several changes per one commit. So you do several changes at a time. Here, for example, we have file 1, file 2 added, and we need, in this case, if not only a single file was changed, we need to provide a summary. Summary is like several words description of whatever you do. For example, in our case we had files. Let's name it like add test files, commit this change. You see that we have a clean history now, a clean change list now, and in history we have an extra entry point. And as you can see, this is very useful. You have interactive mode to see what was added, and if you removed something from the file, it will show as a red color, etc. So we added several files. Now if we update our repository, we won't see the changes here because we haven't yet pushed repository. Pushing means synchronize your local folder with a repository hosted on GitHub. You click on the button to push origin, or here this option also works. Let's push origin. Origin means origin refers to the repository. Basically, origin and repository is the same thing. Okay, now we pushed our changes, and now if we update a page here, we will be able to see our changes. So that's cool, right? And we have the same history here and all the stuff that we were able to do in our UI. We can now do in our file system. Just to give an example, let's try to, for example, to add several more lines to this file, and maybe let's remove these characters and add several more characters. Right, we have two files modified now, and in changes we have two files. Let's add some summary to it. Modify files, for example, commit to master. In history we have 3 entries now. Let's push to origin. And you see, I'm doing it very quickly because this UI is much more comfortable than one in browser. Not to switch to browser, we can speed up process by clicking view on GitHub. And for example, let's see history. Here's our third commit. We open it and we have changes. This is like side-to-side view. This is called split view. We can switch to unified, and you see files that were changed. You see what exactly was changed. Minus syllable means that it was removed, plus syllable opposite. These lines were added to the file. Same here. So this is very cool, and basically you can do you can use GitHub Desktop for all the purposes you need, and this is really a solid solution to use GitHub GitHub repositories, and it doesn't have any big disadvantages, although I don't use it on day-to-day basis because I got used to using a Git command line tool. It's much more comfortable to me. Well, it makes this process of doing different actions, committing, pushing, it makes it much more faster than approach using GitHub Desktop. And I'll try to show you these in the next video. For now, I think that I'm done, and basically as a summary, GitHub Desktop is another way to interact with your repository created with GitHub. You can do everything in a plain version via browser, but it's much more, I think that you agree with me that using GitHub Desktop is much more comfortable and fast than using a plain browser version. So, and you don't need to know any commands, etc., because in the next part, when I will show you Git, there is some commands and some terminal interactions that you need to do because there is no UI interface, only commands available, so you need to run it manually and remember it. But you know, if you're good with using UI and you don't want to actually optimize your process as much as possible, I guess you can stick with GitHub Desktop and do whatever stuff you want in it, because it's very interactive, it's visual. So if you're a visual kind of person, you don't need to think about using a Git command line tool. You'll be good in mostly every situation just by using GitHub Desktop. So that's it for this part, and I will show you Git in the next part. So for the next part, thanks, bye.